And now, we will move to our first keynote speaker, is designer Michelle Jafery, a design fellow at IDEO and former chief creative officer. Michelle leads design teams to turn a big ideas into meaningful experience. Ladies and gentlemen, please with me, Michelle, please.
There we go. Hello, everyone. I'm Mitch. It is such a pleasure to be here. Assalamu alaikum. I come bearing gifts from the creative wilds. And what I mean by that is I want to begin with an idea that was born in the age of alchemy and mystery. It's an idea that is sitting at the very heart of my design ethos. And it's an idea that I want to gift to you today, to let you try it on, feel it out, see if it sparks something inside you. So in medieval maps, the old myths would tell of a key phrase that was often found scrawled in the edges of the maps. It was the uncharted edges of the known world. So the edge of understanding, the edge of the possible. We had no idea what was beyond these maps. And so at the edge of everything, it would read, "Beyond here be dragons." We had no idea. We had no idea what was beyond the world as we knew it. And to me, this ethos, the idea of wandering where there be dragons, is the beating heart of design and innovation. It is about going beyond the boundaries that handcuff our thinking and taking us into these new territories, these new lands that have not yet been mapped. Wandering where there be dragons. So today, I want to bring you 3 different enchantments, 3 different methods to help us see beyond these maps and be able to explore new possibilities and new ideas. But before I jump into all of that, I'm going to share a little bit about myself. I'll be personal as long as everyone's okay with that. I think when I first heard the phrase, "Beyond here be dragons," I was a teenager, and it hit at the perfect moment. So I had grown up, this is little baby Mitch, good little girl, hippie mom, up in the mountains. I was a straight-A student, very, very serious, very, very good girl. So of course, it was no surprise. This led to cliche, teenage rebellion. I completely rebelled against all of the rules, all of the systems, and I was always mad at the system. And to me, the system was all of the rules of reality. We have to do these things this way. We have to do them that way. And I remember asking, think back, can you remember the time when you were a child and you asked, why? Who first invented the idea of an auditorium where I speak and you sit silently and you just have to listen? Or who invented the idea of a bank account? Or a 40-hour work week? Someone designed these things. These were created. So much of what we do is the odd and unconsidered continuing to do of what we've just always done. We almost aren't even thinking about it. And so having this realization when I was a teenager was this epic awakening. It's like, wait a minute, we're just making this all up. And if that's true, then we could have made different choices. And if that's true, then we still can. It's a great quote from Oscar Wilde. Every tradition was once an innovation. So what we are creating today will become the traditions of tomorrow. And I firmly believe that our next era will demand a creative rewilding of imagination. Being willing to go to those places beyond the old maps where, yes, maybe there be dragons, but questioning the assumptions, the habits, the rituals, the behaviors, the products. We can do it in a new way. And so the pink-haired punk of my youth turned into a designer who has spent her career exploring the intersection of design and futuring, What happens when we question a lot of the existing systems and create new kinds of products, new kinds of services, new kinds of experiences? And at IDEO, some of you may have heard of, it's a global design consultancy. I've worked there for over a decade, and we are known for designing anything you can imagine. We're basically a design think tank. So companies come to us and say, I want to invent, for example, Steve Jobs came to us in the 60s and said, I have a loose idea of some kind of device that will control a computer. And IDEO helped invent the concept of a mouse, which, by the way, was actually inspired by and tested on old record players. You know the ball that used to be in mice? Probably people who are too young, they don't even know what a mouse is, but the older ones in the crowd know what I'm talking about. And we've designed everything. We've designed the kitchen of the future for IKEA. We've designed the experience of traveling in a supersonic jet. We've designed entirely new school systems. I met someone today who's a designer of education, and I was talking about how everything can be rethought. The curriculum, where it happens, how it happens, the business model around it. We have that opportunity today. And for the last 7 years or so, I've actually been living and working in the Middle East, where I helped launch and run the Dubai Design Lab, which is essentially a wing of government dedicated to design and innovation. And the goal is to create human-centered approaches to how innovation happens, new services, new policies, new programs, but most of all, and I think you feel it in some of these images, creating the culture where creativity is encouraged, where it's allowed to be messy and take risks and experiment and fail. Because the beauty of what we do, the beauty of design, is that design invites us to escape the gravity of the present in pursuit of the possible. It asks us to question, instead of just saying, well, this is the way things are, it reminds us to ask, but wait, what if it wasn't? I spotted this yesterday in the Ithra gift shop, and I was like, this is exactly it. Create the things you wish existed. You still can. So, I'm only halfway through. But yes, for Ithra, you guys are killing it. So 3 enchantment methods to help us see beyond those old maps, to wander where there be dragons. The Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail, the fae, or the fairy, and the shapeshifter. So these are 3 metaphors, and I'm going to take you through some experiences and some examples of how they come to life. First, the Ouroboros. Now, the Ouroboros is a primal mythic figure that has appeared across civilizations, across culture, across time. I mean, Norse legend tells of the great serpent, Jormungandr, who would encircle the earth and he would bite its own tail. And the ancient Egyptians, many of you have probably seen this, believed that the Ouroboros was a symbol of immortality and the cycles of nature, and the paradox between creation and destruction, between the infinite and the finite. But the trap with the Ouroboros is that you can't escape the loop. You are trapped in the circle of sometimes doing the same thing over and over. There's a classic story from the author Dave Eggers, and it goes like this. 2 fish are swimming through the water. They come across an old fish, and the old fish says to the kids, "Morning, kids, how's the water?" The fish nod, they swim on by, and one of them turns to the other and says, "What the heck is water?" We can't see our own water. We can't see water if we're a fish. So the Ouroboros enchantment is about escaping the trap of innovating within a system, but remembering to zoom out and question a lot of the assumptions of the system. And this is where fear of failure really kicks in, because you are wandering where there may be dragons, right? You're outside of the existing system. So 3 different ways for you to wander there and feel a little bit more safe. Unseen, reframing, and remixing. First, unseen. To see the opportunities for innovation, you first have to unsee all of the assumptions that you're making. And one technique to do this is something that I call rule maker, rule breaker. And how it works is this. First, you list all of the unspoken but assumed assumptions of a system. So let's say you're designing a new hotel. You'd say, okay, well, a hotel, of course, has a front desk, and it's for 24 hours, and it's in one building, and you pay by the night. And then you start to question, wait, what if that wasn't true? What if there was no front desk? What if it's a membership, and it's not pay by the night? What if it's not in a single building? What if it's in people's homes? What if they're spread all across the country? What if I just invented Airbnb? Right? You have to question the assumptions of what you know to be able to unlock a new opportunity. Another way to break out of the loop is remixing worlds together. Now, there's a concept, if anyone's a biologist or knows biology, that I am obsessed with, called the edge effect. And the edge effect is the idea that the richest biodiversity happens at the intersection of two ecosystems. So like where a forest meets a field. And in that moment where the worlds collide, you see species propagating, you see new life, see new forms of flowers, you see possibilities bloom. And the same is true for ideas. So when two really, really different ideas come together, that's when something exciting happens. One of my favorites, if anyone knows Lil Nas, is like when country meets hip hop. Right? Like that was a very, very interesting intersection at the time. And in my art gallery and design concept store in Los Angeles, which, by the way, is focused on art from the Middle East, it was so beautiful, I fell in love with it. And when I moved back to the US, I decided I wanted to bring all of the art and artists to Los Angeles. In the art gallery, we often focus on how can we remix worlds. So what would happen if Arabic culture meets street culture? And all of a sudden you have shoes with old embroidery techniques, but they're old Converse, and it's suddenly mashing up into something magical and new. And at Dubai Design Lab one year, we asked, what would happen if kids and government came together? What if the kids ran the government? What would happen? And we gave them a whole series of different challenges. I mean, these were not cute little questions. We weren't belittling them as kids. But like, create a world in which there are no more countries. We gave this to 14-year-olds and said, what would you come up with? And instead of stopping at brainstorms, we then paired them with designers from all across the world. Industrial designers who brought some of the products to life, service designers, experience designers, and they ended up on stage presenting to Sheikh Mohammed. And some of those concepts ended up becoming programs, ended up becoming services, and actually came to life. All because we took their ideas seriously. All right, and the third way to break out of the loop is reframing. Reframing. The trick here is to spend 10 times as long refining your question as you do imagining your answer. Because when you start off on a project, you have a question, like how might we help Ithra attract more kids? That question could be very, very narrow, or it could be very, very big. But unless you unpack the question, you're not going to get to bigger ideas. So one way to do this is to become obsessed with the word why. And when I first moved to the Middle East, I said, I want to learn 2 words in Arabic. Only 2. I only need 2. I need leish, and I need leishla. And I'm going to sit in every single meeting and just ask why, and ask why not. Because what happens when you ask why is that it expands your thinking. You start to unpack what's actually underneath the problem that someone's having. And I want to take you through 2 examples of what happens if you ask why or if you don't. So this was a project where we were designing a new experience for teachers. And this is an example of leap killing. We didn't ask why. We took a prototype into the room with a teacher, put it in front of her, and said, what do you think of this prototype? And she said, I'd like it if it came in black. Imagine if we stopped there. We walk away and say, great, the takeaway is it should be black. My next prototype will be black. She said she wanted black. Okay, maybe. But what happens if we ask why? So let's do it again. Tell me what your reactions are to this prototype. Well, I'd like it if it came in black. Well, why do you want it to come in black? Well, let me find it. Well, black just feels more formal. Well, why does it feel more formal? What do you mean? Why do you want it to feel more formal? Well, I guess at the end of the day, everything in the classroom is designed for kids. It wouldn't hurt to have one thing that makes me feel like a professional. And you say, okay, well, what does it mean to design something specifically for you to feel like a professional? And maybe she says, well, I went to get my master's degree. I understand the science behind things, and I really want to feel respected. Now you've unpacked the actual insight. There's an opportunity to design something that makes teachers feel dignified. It's not about making it black, right? But you have to ask why. And I like to think about it a little bit like a why ladder. You have to keep asking why, climbing up the ladder until you get to a big insight, and only then do you climb down and start saying, okay, given that insight, how would we do it? How would we do it? How would we do it? So from the Ouroboros, from the snake, I want you to remember this. To create the truly new, you first have to shed your skin. You have to be able to look past the assumptions of today. All right, second enchantment, the fae or the fairy. Language is power. Fables warn of never telling a fairy your name because she can control you. And in fact, travelers were told, keep a fake name in the back of your head in case you meet a fairy and she asks, just give them a fake name because then she won't be able to be in charge of you. But if you could figure out a fairy's name, you could then control her. You could unlock access to this whole fairy realm. Even the word abracadabra is not just about rabbits and a hat and a magic. It's about the power of language to create. So it actually comes from the Aramaic phrase, abruk al-babra. So abracadabra is albruk al-babra. And what that means is, as I speak, so I create. As I speak, so I create. So magician is creating. When he says abracadabra, he's making something happen with his words. And the power of language is so robust that we struggle to even think a thought that we don't have the language for. The limits of my language are the limits of my world. I often think about language as like the handle on a suitcase. So without a handle, you can't pick the idea up. You can't carry it around. You can't give it to someone else. So the way that you frame something, the way that you name something, the way that you storytell it, makes new ideas portable into other people's minds. To create these new worlds, we need new words. We need new words. So 3 different ways to do this. You can coin it, you can evoke it, or you can help people feel it. Coining it is one of the easiest. Someone came up with the name, the sharing economy. Someone named streaming. There was some boardroom at Netflix when someone says, what if we call it streaming? Boom, now it's a thing. Now it matters. Solar punk, design thinking. When IDEO came up with the phrase design thinking, now we were able to scale it to the world. Like the fae, if you can name something, you can invite people into that world. Or rather than literally naming it, you can evoke it. So one of the cruel tricks of the brain is you can only understand new ideas in relation to something you already know. And so that's why very often when someone's trying to explain an idea, they're like, oh, it's like X, but for Y. It's like Uber, but for socks, or whatever they come up with. But metaphor has the unique ability to ghost right past the rational brain. When you speak in metaphor, you get it immediately. You get it immediately. So when I was pitching the idea in Dubai for the Ministry of Possibilities, this was an entirely new ministry that we wanted to launch. I used the metaphor of a flock of birds. And I talked about when birds move, they move in murmuration, and they're reacting to each other in real time. Some of you have probably seen this. It's magical. And they're forming and they're reforming and they're listening to each other. And I said, imagine if government entities weren't separate units, but had the opportunity to flock together on some impossible challenges and reform. And you might think that a government boardroom is way too fluffy for a conversation about birds and metaphors. This is exactly what made the idea stick. Everyone left that room and said, they're right. What if we were a flock? Why do we have to be buildings? Or another favorite, this was a nonprofit called the American Refugee Committee. Horrible vest, incredibly ugly, and we said, we're going to rename you a light. We're going to go from the function of what you do, helping refugees, to the feeling of what you do. You help people feel alive with light and new possibilities in their next chapter. And then finally, helping people feel it. This is the last wisdom of the Fae. Helping tell the story in a way that compels people. Because storytelling it's one part story, like is your concept good? Are you pitching something that's really exciting? But it's one part telling. Are you inspiring in the way that you're sharing the idea? So I've done things like shoot documentary films where we go inside the lives of the people that we're creating for, or created immersive presentations where, this was the Ministry of Food Security, and we said, what if we do our final presentation as a dinner party? And every single course will be paired with a different concept around how kids could eat more healthy foods. So from the Fae, I hope you remember this. Finding new words will help unlock these new worlds. Coin it, evoke it, help people feel it. All right, we're nearing the end. The final wisdom, the wisdom of the shapeshifter. So shapeshifters, or changelings as they're sometimes called, shapeshifters are masters of fluidity. They can morph from one form to another in the wink of an eye. But the brilliance of a shapeshifter is not just that it can change form. The brilliance is that it's created the right conditions to be able to evolve. And I think about this a little bit like the imagination infrastructure that you've created. With buildings, there's infrastructure. With cities, there's infrastructure. What is the infrastructure you've built around an idea that could encourage it to evolve? And by this, I mean, what's the team? What's the culture? Is there a space for experimentation? Is there space for risk? Do people feel inspired to be able to play? Ideas are living things. And if you kill an idea too quickly, you try to close it down, it's not going to blossom. I like to think instead that the goal of design, early on, especially in ideas, it's just getting formed, is to hold an idea like a butterfly in your hand. Hold it loosely. Hold it loose. See what it's going to become. So 3 different ways that you can encourage evolution. Inviting play, getting scrappy, and building trust. Abandoning the spirit of play is one of the most dangerous ideas that has ever taken hold. People hear the word play, they think, oh yeah, my kids play. No, play is exploration. Play is curiosity. Play is taking an idea and wrestling with it and seeing where it might go. The creative mind plays with an idea that it loves, and that's how it evolves. It's a powerful, powerful tool for exploring the unknown. This is an example from a project in Dubai where we were building a creative compound. And of course, we had very, very important stakeholder alignment meetings on the business model and the strategy, but we decided we wanted to pair that with experiential workshops where we invited everyone, ministers, real estate developers, the artists themselves, to think with their hands and play. We gave them cutouts of old magazines, scissors, and we said, create collages for posters of the programming that you think could exist in this school 10 years from now. What's the kind of classes that are being taught? What's the events that are happening? And they got to work making. They created such weird and wonderful things. Imagine, instead of just debating, the act of creating helped us have richer and deeper conversations around where it could go. And to invite that shape-shifting, you have to remember to stay scrappy. If you try to make something beautiful too early, you're not allowing it to be scrappy and nimble and see where it goes. Because the goal is discovery. Let's see what this could become. And I'm going to play a video. This is from a project we were doing with Sesame Street. And we were designing a new app for kids that allowed them to tap on different parts of a monster and it would start dancing. And we could have hired a developer, hired a graphic designer, created the whole prototype and then tested it with kids. Instead, we said, why don't we just have a giant cardboard cutout of an iPhone and try to test out how it might feel. So
cue music. So
little
this
sample.
is possible dance moves for Monster Maker. So music starts, and I'm the player, so I come in and I touch the monster, and he gives me a special dance move. I go and touch again, and he does a different one. And it can go for as long as I want. It has a few signature moves. And when I've had enough and I'm done dancing, I touch the back button, and it pauses, and the music stops. Monster Maker.
Cool.
That's all I can. Come on, that's all I can.
Wow.
Get in there.
But we did that in 5 minutes, right? We were able to prototype and see, is it going to work? Is it going to be fun? We don't know. You can prototype anything. You can prototype anything. But prototyping is only possible if you have built a culture of trust. You have to be able to trust each other. So in the Dubai Design Lab, one of the most important things that we knew we had to do was build a culture of experimentation. Build a culture where we trusted each other to get a little weird together and see where things would go. And one way that we would do this is very strange, so go with me, is once a month, we would give each other a creative challenge. And we had 1 hour. And it was very, very crappy materials, glue guns, paper. You could not be good. It was only an hour. And you were given a creative challenge like design a restaurant for ants, or create a new fashion accessory for your fatal flaw. And what happens is it becomes a bit like a creative gym. The same way you go to a gym to exercise your muscles, we went to our creative gym to exercise our creativity. And so we create things like dream catchers of the future. We're weird, like what if something could capture your dreams and play it back? What are new kinds of toys where we cut up old toys and then glued them back together and told new stories? What are cities of the future, and what are the new spaces that exist within them? The point is not to do something beautiful and perfect. The point is to practice. The point is to exercise your muscles so that your muscles become comfortable being weird, trying new ideas, playing, creating without fear. So finally, from the shapeshifter, this is the takeaway. Big ideas only bloom in the creative wilds. You need spaces that are filled with play and scrappiness and trust, or else those ideas are not going to blossom. They're going to shrink. And so we end back where we began at the old maps, whirlwind journey to the great beyond. I hope dearly that these 3 enchantments keep you company as you journey to where there be dragons. So there's the Ouroboros helping you escape the loop. There's the Fae creating these new worlds and these new words. And finally, the shapeshifter, making time for playful experimentation. And if you forget everything I said, you might, it's okay. If you forget everything I said, just remember this. Someone made it up. Someone made all of this up, all of this. And you can make it up again. And you can make it up again. And you can make it up with more heart, more bravery, more beauty, more care. It is time for a rewilding of our imaginations. Thank you.